Behind the dazzling smiles of Britain's brightest stars from the 60s to the 90s lay a terrifying darkness. While millions adored them, their wives endured unbearable emotional storms and endless betrayals. The crushing weight of this hidden cruelty pushed 10 women toward a heartbreakingly tragic escape from this world. Today, we uncover the dark secrets of these beloved idols. Could you ever imagine such darkness hiding behind a famous face? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the untold truths of the entertainment world.
Rex Harrison. Behind the elegant facade of the quintessential English gentleman lay a heart completely devoid of empathy. Reginald Carey Harrison, known to the world simply as Rex, charmed international audiences with his sophisticated wit and flawless manners. Yet those closest to him knew a completely different man, one whose emotional coldness left a trail of utter devastation. For decades, he dominated the silver screen, winning prestigious awards and the adoration of countless devoted admirers. In 1962, this celebrated actor married the extraordinarily talented Welsh actress Rachel Roberts. Their union initially seemed like a perfect pairing of theatrical titans, but behind closed doors, it quickly became a relentless psychological nightmare. Rex was entirely consumed by his own immense ego and expected absolute devotion while offering nothing but harsh criticism in return. His wandering eye and constant need for new romantic conquests became impossible to conceal. Rather than showing remorse for his wandering affections, he flaunted his numerous indiscretions, leaving his devoted wife feeling utterly worthless. He possessed a terrifying ability to emotionally dismantle the women who loved him, using his sharp intellect as a weapon of domestic destruction. Rachel found herself trapped in a vicious cycle of desperately seeking his approval and receiving only humiliating rejection. Her once bright spirit began to fade under the weight of his cruelty. The legendary star showed absolutely no compassion as his wife spiraled into a profound emotional abyss. Instead of offering a supporting hand, he viewed her growing despair as a personal inconvenience and ultimately discarded her when she became too much trouble. Their divorce in 1971 shattered her completely, leaving her hopelessly tethered to the ghost of a man who had moved on to his next romantic victim without a single backward glance or moment of genuine hesitation.
For nearly a decade after their separation, Rachel tried desperately to rebuild her shattered existence. But the deep psychological wounds inflicted by her former husband simply refused to heal. She remained obsessed with winning him back, completely unable to process the profound betrayal she had endured. The final blow came when she realized he would never return, having easily replaced her in his glamorous life. The unbearable sorrow finally consumed her entirely in 1980. Unable to endure the persistent agony of a broken heart, she made the devastating choice to end her earthly suffering once and for all. When the news of her tragic departure reached him, the celebrated idol displayed a chilling indifference that shocked even his harshest critics. He continued his glamorous lifestyle, practically erasing the memory of the woman whose light he had extinguished. The glittering awards and fame could never wash away the dark stain of his relentless cruelty.
John Osborne.
The angry young man of British theatre revolutionized the cultural landscape, but his revolutionary brilliance masked a profoundly dark and vindictive soul. He was celebrated across the nation for his biting intellect and undeniable genius, becoming a massive celebrity during the mid-20th century. Audiences hung on his every word, completely unaware that the passionate fire he brought to the stage was the very same flame that would eventually burn his personal life to absolute ashes. In 1968, this towering cultural idol married the prominent and fiercely talented actress Jill Bennett. To the outside world, they seemed like the ultimate artistic power couple, dominating the London social scene with their sparkling presence. However, the reality of their union was a deeply toxic battleground, where his immense vanity demanded constant feeding. He possessed a famously brutal temper, and used his mastery of language to launch relentless verbal assaults on her. The marriage quickly deteriorated into a nightmare of profound emotional neglect and cruel betrayals. He was notoriously unfaithful, actively pursuing other romantic interests while simultaneously demanding absolute loyalty from his increasingly fragile wife. His deliberate attempts to tear down her self-esteem were merciless, as he mocked her insecurities and constantly reminded her of his own supposed superiority. She found herself trapped in a suffocating web of psychological torment. Eventually, the sheer weight of his hostility became too much to bear, leading to a remarkably bitter separation in 1978. Yet, even after their divorce, his vindictive nature knew no bounds. He continued to publicly humiliate her, writing profoundly cruel remarks that further shattered her already fragile mental state. While he moved forward into new relationships and continued to bask in his fame, she was left to navigate the lonely aftermath of his destructive affection. The scars of his relentless emotional abuse proved to be permanent, leaving her battling overwhelming shadows for more than a decade. Despite her own successful career, the deep void left by his terrifying cruelty and the constant sting of his public insults slowly drained her will to continue. The darkness finally consumed her in 1990, when she made the heartbreaking decision to find permanent peace and quietly step away from a world that had offered her so much silent agony. When the devastating news of her tragic departure reached him, his reaction was chillingly devoid of human warmth or basic decency. Instead of expressing even a sliver of regret for the torment he had caused, he responded with legendary coldness, penning words of shocking bitterness that horrified the public. The celebrated genius proved that behind the glittering awards and intellectual triumphs lived a man entirely incapable of love, leaving a legacy forever stained by this dark tragedy. Ted Hughes. The towering figure of 20th century British poetry possessed a dark magnetism that captivated the entire nation. Edward James Hughes, known universally as Ted, was celebrated as a ruggedly handsome literary giant whose raw talent brought him immense fame and the adoration of countless readers. He stalked through the cultural landscape like an unstoppable force of nature, yet behind this majestic artistic presence hid a profoundly destructive energy. The brilliant verses masked a cold heart. In 1956, this commanding cultural idol married the brilliantly fragile American writer Sylvia Plath. Their union was initially heralded as a magnificent meeting of true artistic minds, a passionate connection that seemed entirely destined for eternal greatness. However, the golden illusion of their domestic life was merely a fragile veil covering immense despair. He quietly demanded the spotlight entirely for himself, slowly dimming her extraordinary light with emotional neglect. The devastating turning point arrived when his wandering gaze fell upon another woman, leading to a notoriously turbulent romance. He made absolutely no effort to conceal his crushing betrayal, bringing his new obsession into their shared social circles and deeply humiliating his devoted wife. The profound cruelty of his actions completely shattered her delicate emotional balance. She found herself abandoned in a foreign country, struggling with their children while he pursued selfish desires. His blatant infidelity was not merely a physical betrayal. It was a systematic dismantling of her creative spirit and personal self-worth. He frequently weaponized his dominance, leaving her trapped in a suffocating atmosphere of rejection and profound isolation. As he brazenly paraded his new affection across London society, the sheer weight of his callousness pushed her toward an incredibly dark abyss. The man who had promised her forever had casually discarded her without any hesitation. In the freezing winter of 1963, the unbearable sorrow finally became completely overwhelming for the young mother. Unable to endure the persistent agony of his ultimate betrayal, she made the heartbreaking choice to seek a permanent escape from her earthly suffering. She carefully ensured the absolute safety of their sleeping children before quietly surrendering to the devastating darkness. The profound tragedy shocked the world, casting a permanent shadow over his legacy. Despite the immense public outcry and the haunting reality of his cruel actions, he continued his uninterrupted rise to cultural supremacy.
He was eventually appointed to the absolute highest literary honors in the nation, shielded by an establishment that eagerly chose to ignore his domestic sins. Yet, the brilliant woman he destroyed became a legendary figure of tragic sorrow. His devastating charm proved to be a fatal trap, proving that monstrous darkness can hide behind poetic brilliance.
Arthur Koestler.
The towering intellectual giant and celebrated author held immense influence over British cultural circles for decades. Arthur Koestler was revered across the nation as a brilliant philosophical mind, a man whose profound thoughts shaped public discourse and commanded absolute respect. Yet, concealed behind his prestigious awards and scholarly brilliance was a deeply sinister and monstrously controlling nature. His domestic life was a chilling landscape of emotional tyranny, where he reigned as an absolute and unforgiving dictator over the women who dared to love him. He possessed a notoriously explosive temper and a relentless need to dominate everyone who entered his personal orbit. In 1965, this formidable cultural idol married his dedicated secretary, Cynthia Jeffries, a gentlewoman who was significantly younger and entirely captivated by his magnetic intellect. To the outside world, she appeared as his faithful and quiet companion, but behind closed doors, she was merely a captive of his immense vanity and profound psychological cruelty. He viewed her not as a partner, but as a possession. His treatment of his devoted wife was marked by a terrifying emotional manipulation that systematically stripped away her entire independence. He openly engaged in numerous, blatant indiscretions, bringing his romantic conquests into their shared life with absolute disregard for her fragile feelings. When she dared to express sorrow over his betrayals, he would unleash a torrent of intellectual mockery, completely dismantling her self-esteem and convincing her that she was completely worthless without his validating presence. Over the decades, his relentless dominance acted as a slow and deeply destructive poison, entirely erasing her individual identity and leaving her completely isolated from the outside world.
He demanded absolute submission in every aspect of their daily existence,
treating her unwavering affection with a chillingly cold contempt that left her emotionally starved. The brilliant author expertly crafted an environment where she believed she simply could not survive outside his towering shadow, turning her profound love into a devastating psychological prison. The final and most horrifying chapter of his monstrous control unfolded in the early 1980s, when his own physical health began to rapidly decline due to severe illness. Facing his own impending mortality, his immense ego could not comprehend the idea of his wife continuing to live, breathe, and find happiness without him. Through years of relentless emotional conditioning, he had already extinguished her inner light, completely convincing the healthy 55-year-old woman that her earthly existence held absolutely no value.
In the spring of 1983,
the devastating culmination of his lifelong cruelty completely shocked the entire nation. Utterly consumed by the psychological chains he had so carefully forged, she felt compelled to join him in a permanent and tragic escape from this world. Despite possessing a perfectly healthy body and a potentially long future, she quietly surrendered to the devastating darkness alongside him. The celebrated genius had effectively swallowed her soul,
ensuring his final act of unforgiving dominance would drag her eternally into the abyss.
Robert Shaw.
The ruggedly intense presence of this legendary British star dominated the silver screen throughout the 60s and 70s. Robert Shaw was celebrated globally for his powerful performances and undeniable charisma, projecting an image of absolute strength and brilliant masculinity. Audiences were completely captivated by his commanding voice and fierce gaze. Yet, concealed entirely beneath his celebrated artistic triumphs was a deeply turbulent personal life, characterized by overwhelming dominance and a severe lack of emotional care. In 1963, this formidable cinematic titan married the exquisitely talented and highly acclaimed Scottish actress Mary Ure. Initially, their passionate union appeared to be a brilliant merging of two phenomenal theatrical talents, radiating glamour across the British cultural landscape. However, the glittering surface quickly cracked to reveal a profoundly suffocating domestic reality.
He possessed a terrifyingly explosive temperament and constantly demanded absolute submission from the woman who truly loved him.
His approach to their marriage was relentlessly possessive, yet shockingly hypocritical. While he expected her to sacrifice her own flourishing career to manage their growing household, he engaged in numerous blatant indiscretions without any sense of genuine remorse. He paraded his wandering affections and turbulent romances with a cold indifference that repeatedly shattered her fragile self-esteem. She found herself completely trapped in a toxic cycle of enduring his betrayals while desperately trying to maintain their family. The sheer weight of his psychological dominance acted as a slow and devastating poison on her brilliant artistic spirit. Instead of nurturing her extraordinary talent, he viewed her success as a direct threat to his immense ego, using his sharp intellect to constantly diminish her achievements.
As he continued to bask in international glory and pursue endless selfish desires, she was left to navigate a profoundly lonely existence, slowly sinking into an abyss of overwhelming emotional despair and profound mental exhaustion. By the middle of the decade, the persistent agony of his cruel neglect and constant betrayals had entirely consumed her once vibrant soul. She desperately attempted to numb the unbearable sorrow of her broken marriage, seeking any possible relief from the suffocating shadows of his towering ego. In 1975, immediately following a triumphant return to the London theatrical stage, the immense burden of her silent suffering finally became too heavy for her fragile heart to carry for even a single moment longer. Unable to face another sunrise beside a man who had systematically dismantled her entire being, she made the devastating choice to seek permanent peace and stepped quietly away from her earthly torment. When her tragic departure was discovered, the fiercely dominant actor displayed a chilling stoicism that deeply unsettled those who knew the dark truth of their union.
He swiftly moved forward into new romances, leaving behind the shattered legacy of a brilliant woman whose vibrant light was extinguished by his unforgiving shadow.
Harold Pinter.
The undisputed master of modern British theatre possessed an unparalleled ability to write about human deception, yet his own personal life was far darker than any play he ever staged. Harold Pinter was celebrated as an absolute literary genius, a towering intellectual presence who completely redefined the dramatic arts during the mid-20th century. Audiences and critics alike worshipped his profound talent, completely unaware that his legendary artistic brilliance was fueled by a deeply terrifying emotional coldness. He understood the intricate complexities of the human heart only well enough to know exactly how to break it into a million irreparable pieces. In 1956, this commanding playwright married the phenomenally talented actress Vivian Merchant. She was not merely his devoted wife, she was his ultimate artistic muse, bringing his most famous and complex female characters to life on the glittering London stage. To the admiring public, they represented the absolute pinnacle of sophisticated cultural romance, a flawless partnership of brilliant minds. However,
The reality of their domestic existence was gradually poisoned by his growing arrogance. As his fame reached monumental heights, he began to view her unwavering loyalty not as a precious gift, but as an absolute right that required no genuine affection or basic respect in return. The foundation of their union completely crumbled when his wandering affections became impossible to conceal. He engaged in numerous clandestine romances, transforming their shared life into a humiliating web of deceit. His cruelest act came when he brazenly abandoned her for a highly prominent socialite, orchestrating the separation with a chillingly calculated efficiency.
He completely stripped her of her dignity, publicly moving on to his glamorous new existence without shedding a single tear for the woman who had supported him during his darkest early struggles. He treated her immense sorrow as a deeply annoying inconvenience rather than a devastating tragedy he had personally caused. The sudden and brutal abandonment left the fragile actress completely isolated in a profoundly dark emotional abyss. She found herself utterly unable to comprehend the terrifying speed with which the man she loved had simply erased her from his triumphant narrative. Stripped of both her beloved partner and her primary creative collaborator, her once sparkling spirit began to rapidly deteriorate under the crushing weight of public humiliation. She was hopelessly trapped in the haunting memories of their past, desperately seeking an escape from the relentless psychological agony that his unforgiving betrayal had inflicted upon her fragile soul.
Her vibrant career slowly ground to a complete and devastating halt. Unable to endure the persistent shadows of her broken heart, she began a slow and tragic withdrawal from the world. Seeking to numb the unbearable sorrow of his ultimate rejection, she spiraled into deeply destructive habits that systematically destroyed her physical and mental well-being. This heartbreaking descent was a desperate, silent surrender to the overwhelming despair he had deliberately caused. When she ultimately found permanent peace in 1982, her departure was widely mourned as the tragic destruction of a beautiful soul by a merciless genius. Meanwhile, the celebrated writer continued to collect prestigious international awards, completely shielded by an elite cultural establishment that eagerly chose to ignore the devastating human cost of his monumental legacy.
David Tomlinson. The impeccably dressed gentleman of British cinema brought endless joy to generations of audiences around the globe. David Tomlinson was universally adored for his deeply comforting screen presence, radiating a cheerful warmth that made him an absolute national treasure. Millions of children and adults alike fell in love with his seemingly effortless charm and his perfectly cultivated image of the slightly bumbling but ultimately wonderful English patriarch. He seemed to perfectly embody a life of absolute joy and light-hearted domestic bliss. However, behind this famous cinematic smile lay a profoundly terrifying and completely shattering domestic tragedy. In the autumn of 1943, this rising theatrical star married an elegant American widow named Mary Lindsay Hidding. Her heart was already heavily burdened by the sudden and devastating loss of her first husband in the raging war, but David believed his boundless charisma could single-handedly heal her deeply broken spirit. Unfortunately, he possessed an incredibly demanding and completely unsympathetic nature behind closed doors. He was intensely focused on his own soaring ambitions and simply could not provide the deep emotional support she so desperately needed to process her profound grief. As he eagerly returned to London to actively pursue his glamorous career aspirations, he casually left her stranded in New York City with her 2 young children. His shocking emotional detachment during their forced separation completely dismantled her fragile mental state. He frequently dismissed her desperate pleas for comfort as mere dramatic outbursts, coldly instructing her to simply compose herself and stop being an unnecessary burden on his professional life. The profound isolation she experienced, coupled with his absolute lack of genuine compassion,
proved entirely devastating to her psychological stability. He remained completely blinded by his own towering ego, entirely refusing to acknowledge the extremely dangerous depths of her escalating depression. He believed that his mere status as a celebrated performer should be enough to keep her satisfied and quietly waiting for his eventual return. Trapped in a luxurious hotel high above the bustling city streets, she found herself entirely consumed by an unbearable darkness that her distant and unsympathetic new husband blatantly refused to acknowledge. He had promised to be her ultimate savior, but instead became an architect of profound emotional neglect. On a freezing December day in 1943, the unimaginable weight of her untreated sorrow finally shattered her entirely. In an act of absolute despair that shocked the world, she gathered her 2 young children and made a devastating leap from the towering heights of their 15th floor hotel window, ensuring a permanent escape from their earthly suffering. The horrifying tragedy was a direct and brutal consequence of his monumental emotional failure. Though he later found immense international fame and successfully rebuilt his life, the ghosts of this devastating chapter remained a deeply guarded secret behind his famously cheerful facade.
Ian Hendry.
The brooding intensity of this celebrated British actor made him an absolute sensation on television and cinema screens across the nation. Ian Hendry possessed a deeply magnetic and completely undeniable raw talent that instantly captivated audiences throughout the 1960s. He projected an image of absolute sophistication and brilliant complexity, yet beneath his professional brilliance lurked a fiercely destructive soul. His celebrated performances were heavily fueled by a terrifying inner darkness that eventually spilled over, creating an utterly devastating and unforgiving reality for the woman who dared to stand by his side. In the winter of 1963, this prominent television idol married the exceptionally talented and universally adored actress Janet Munro. She was widely celebrated as the radiant golden girl of British cinema, possessing a sparkling charm that had won the hearts of millions around the globe.
To the adoring public, their union represented the ultimate merging of 2 phenomenal theatrical forces. However, behind the heavily guarded doors of their domestic life, the glamorous illusion rapidly dissolved into a suffocating nightmare of relentless emotional turbulence and profound psychological cruelty. He was entirely consumed by his own monumental insecurities and demanded absolute control over his increasingly fragile wife. Instead of supporting her flourishing artistic journey, his crushing jealousy transformed their shared existence into an intensely toxic battleground. He actively and deliberately dismantled her previously unshakable confidence, using his sharp intellect to constantly diminish her extraordinary achievements. She desperately tried to navigate the endless chaos of his deeply reckless lifestyle, sacrificing her own glowing career to salvage a marriage that was completely poisoned by his volatile temper. The sheer weight of his relentless psychological dominance acted as a slow and devastatingly cruel poison on her brilliant spirit. Trapped in a vicious cycle of desperately seeking his affection and receiving only deeply humiliating rejection, she found herself completely isolated in a profoundly dark, emotional abyss. Seeking any possible escape from the constant agony of his terrifying unpredictability, she spiraled into deeply destructive habits that systematically destroyed her well-being. Even after their bitterly inevitable separation in 1971, she remained hopelessly tethered to the haunting shadows of his dominance. By the end of 1972, the persistent sorrow of her completely shattered existence finally became entirely overwhelming. Her deeply broken spirit simply could no longer endure the immense psychological wounds he had so deliberately inflicted over the years. Unable to face another sunrise burdened by the ghosts of his devastating cruelty, she made the heartbreaking choice to seek a permanent peace and quietly stepped away from her earthly torment.
The brilliant star he had systematically destroyed became a legendary figure of tragic sorrow, while he continued his turbulent existence, forever haunted by the beautiful light he had so callously extinguished.